We have, of course, Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Foundation, and on Thursday, first hour, we have David John Oates, reverse speech specialist. You've got some really interesting things. There's been some interviews done recently. We are working to get Roger Stone on, by the way, on the program, and with Harley Schlanger.
I actually did a special link. It's I think probably about the first time I've ever done a special link on my news blog. All it was a link to a thing that he had on with Alex Jones when he interviewed him. It's a long one; it's 35 minutes, but it is so good. It's a YouTube, and it starts out. Trump is about ready to expose the biggest money laundering scam in history. But it really is only partially about that. Right. It basically lays out kind of what's going to happen in Cleveland. But first, let me cover that. Hillary Clinton, even if she's not indicted, or if she's indicted and pardoned, or indicted after the election, what other? Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have this Clinton Foundation. It's a money laundering scam. Virtually none of it goes to any real charitable foundation. It's a way to accept payoffs from foreign countries and corporations and individuals.
Including for the access to buy or sell weapons of mass, weapons for warfare,
you name
etc.
it. You name it. When she was Secretary of State, and going back to other things, and now running for office as president, senator, her husband being president. All it's a scam, and that alone, Trump can literally expose her and her husband for the incredibly rotten, corrupt, evil so-and-sos that they are. And Trump can buy the time on TV. He can do it, and do it very well. And when all is said and done, that alone will ensure that Hillary Clinton is another president of the United States of America. Hallelujah.
Hannity last night on the Fox News Report had an interview with Melania Trump and Donald. And that interview was very well done. Melania didn't have a lot to say, but she said, my husband has a good heart. He's not an anti-woman person. He's not racist. He has lots of women, lots of people of color, and his corporations right at the highest levels. He's got 5,000 corporations. He knows how to fix America. And Trump had the statement that there'll be a very deep recession. He was kind of winking like really depression. And then he paused for a second and said, if I'm not elected. You got to understand, this is God's trump card. If he doesn't get in, and we have somebody like Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or Cruz or some other we call parachute candidate the Republicans try to get in, and can guarantee it, by the way, their vote last night in a crowd in Wisconsin, right in Wisconsin, that basically Hannity asked this question: if the GOP actually removes Trump from the candidacy after he gets a majority of votes, etc., but maybe he's just as shy, but even if he gets it, and they remove him one way or another through technicalities, will you stay home? And 100% of the audience said, yes, we won't vote, which means they'll guarantee a Democrat gets in, which are basically, they put the word Democrat, but really they're social communists, and they're globalists, because Hillary Clinton's a globalist. Her husband, for example, got rid of Glass-Steagall. He transferred technology to the Russians and Chinese to target American cities. The pipeline directly to the state of it's a real hell. And by the way, I'm one of the few that call it what it is. I'm not saying that Israel shouldn't exist and it should be protected by us, but the current people that run the state of Israel are Zionists. And what we're talking about is not the kind of Zionism.
It's worse than that. They're not just Zionists. They're what I call hyper-racist.
Well, let me explain the version of Zionism, okay? Biblical Zionism is when the Lord returns, and this is many Jews believe this right in America. They don't believe the state of Israel should exist until Messiah returns. And what they say is the biblical term, which was given to Abraham, will be from the Nile River to the Euphrates, etc., a very large territory, but it won't be just the house of Judah, it'll be the house of Ephraim and Judah. The chief of the Ephraimic nations is America, but they include all the nations of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, etc. These are all the Ephraimic nations. The tribes that originally were the northern tribes of Israel are all the house of Ephraim, period. The Scots, the Irish, the Germans, the French, the Celts, the Spaniards, all these peoples are Ephraimic tribes. That's the fact. That's why if you look at Scandinavia, it means, basically, in the language, it means the house of Dan. They're Danites. People need to start grasping this. The fact is, we are heading toward a culmination of history right now, and the abomination that desolates is real simple. It's other than the blood of Jesus standing up in a sacrifice on Sukkot by rabbinic law. That's an abomination against the blood of Jesus that paid the price to separate us from God. And it desolates. It means it sets up a Palestinian state. So when the peace treaty is signed to allow the Jews to get access to the Temple Mount or the area south of the gate, so that they're up in the area of the springs of Gihon to start their sacrifice, because that's where the spring is to do their blood sacrifice. And they allow the Palestinians to have a Palestinian terrorist state with ISIS and ISIL and Muslims. That is the start of the tribulation, and by rabbinic law, it has to occur on a future Sukkot, whether it's this year or 10 years from now. The fact is we're heading very quickly toward it, and the only thing that's going to stop and start America repenting is the election of Trump, period. Anything other than that is disaster. Whether it's
anything other than that, you have the usual suspects.
Yeah, if you got Lion Ted Cruz and his wife, who's a globalist, she helped co-author the North American Free Trade Agreement and the globalist organizations. She's CFR member, and she's a Goldman Sachs girl on Melania. And the reason why they attacked Melania Trump is so they could shut Trump down from making comments not about the looks of Cruz's wife, but her activities, which are very damned evil. I've had an article I posted up a few days ago from John Spring, who's a very good author, a geopolitical analyst, and it exposes all the horrors of what Heidi Cruz has done. It's just horrendous. And so this lying Ted is totally in the back pocket of Goldman Sachs and the globalists, and he's a lying piece of garbage. That's what he is.
Well, of course. Of course.
Yeah. So where this is going, Roger Stone, by the way, he's very intelligent, by the way, so this link is important. We hope to get him on soon, because I want to go a little deeper than just some of the things that have been said I saw the Roger Stone interview. But we need to go deeper with Roger Stone, because what's happening right now, the corruption is so deep that there are Democratic leaders of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, who said he can work with Hillary Clinton. So they don't care if they destroy the chances of another Republican president. They just want to have the cabal continue to swim in the sea of the District of Criminals.
Of course. They're two, one party with two names. Right. And they spin things slightly different, but it's all lies and smoke and mirrors. Right. What Roger Stone said on the long interview that he had with Alex Jones, kind of reading between the lines, well, one of the things he said was they want everybody to come to Cleveland, everybody possible. Drive, take a bus, fly if you can afford it, whatever. Come to Cleveland, because they're trying to steal this. They're basically in our face saying this is the Republican Party that makes the rules. We select the candidate, and the people have nothing to do with it. And you tell that to people that stood in line to vote at the primaries, they might say, "Huh? Excuse me?" But anyway, now that tells me two things. It tells me they're although Stone says he believes that they're going to have a clear majority, but it tells me that they're very worried they may not, that they're going to pull so many rotten tricks and change the rules and everything else that they want to pack the streets and the area with hundreds of thousands of people so that they can't do an outright theft of the nomination. But it also tells me that they're setting themselves up, if they have to run third party, for not just a third-party run, but a full speed ahead, hard cavalry charge, third-party race based on the fact that the insiders stole the nomination, that Trump is the only one that's going to save this country and turn things around. And believe you me, that would be very powerful. That might even be more powerful than if he won the nomination of the Republican Party.
Yeah. Exactly,
so, yeah. This is, but also what's being set up at Cleveland is going to be far worse than Chicago. Not necessarily violence, although it could be. Certainly the other side would like to do that. But it's going to be the most upsetting, most controversial, rambunctious nomination convention in living history.
Absolutely. I had a message from one of our callers. Benny wanted to know the long-term effect of Lovenox. Really bad. We'll tell you when we get back. And welcome back. By the way, just on the break there, I had a lady that contacted me. By the way, you can either contact me by email or phone, and I will return anybody's call anywhere in the world at no cost to give you a quick kind of 1, 2, 3 answer. And I've been doing this now for 40 years, so I have a lot of answers stored up on my Quote.
Yeah, I just listened to that, and I was very impressed.
Well, I actually consult with special. I was certified as an expert witness in all, not some, all specialists. So if you got me in court, and the most powerful thing I used was a thing called quote marks, because I'd read a foot-thick chart, tab it, and memorize it. So if I was in the docket and I was actually being deposed, let me tell you, the other attorneys on the other side were sweating balls, because they realized trying to depose Dr. Deagle is a very painful thing, especially if you don't have the quote marks where I can tell them which tab to go to in the records. And if you quote the actual record, whether it's an MRI scan or blood work or other things, it's scary. Okay, I'm a scary guy.
I got to cover something here. The Political Insider has it's politicalinsider.com, I think is what it is, has a great article on Ohio Governor John Kasich, who, by the way, is being funded by none other than George Soros, chief operative for the Rothschild Empire. I think he just dumped about, if I'm not mistaken, around $700 extra $1,000 into him to keep him in. One theory is that he is being kept in the race because they think that Trump may actually get the nomination, but they want him as a deal maker, and he'll be on the ticket as vice president. Rather like LBJ was JFK's vice president, he had to take him, and Reagan had to put Bush on the ticket, and so forth.
Well, the reason, by the way, the reason why
in JFK's case, he got his brains blown out by a conspiracy in Dallas to put LBJ in, and we got the Vietnam War and God knows what else.
Let me insert something that'll fit in exactly what you're saying. On Thursday, on the first hour, I have David John Oates. Now, on the Rents Network, they did a show interview with all three experts. Jim Mars, who's an expert on geopolitical history. They had a remote viewer, and they had David John Oates actually doing reverse speech. And they all came to the same conclusion. That would have been wild. 3 hours of it, by the way, and they did an analysis that showed very clearly the exact same statements of all three of them said the same thing, which is with a coup d'etat, which the CIA took over the U.S. government. Now, you got to understand that George Bush was on the scene in Dealey Plaza. George was senior.
Of course. He was one of the senior operatives in command.
Right, and also Bill Clinton. Remember, it's been stated in the 90s and since then by George Bush Sr. that Bill Clinton is, quote, their adopted son. So is Benny bin Laden, who actually is a bin Laden family member, has been to the Waco compound many times. What you have to understand is just how corrupt the cabal is. For example, the prison systems in America are primarily owned by the Carlyle Group, which owns not only a lot of the uranium mines on the planet, but also owns almost all of the private prisons with the Queen of England, the bin Laden family, the Saudi Arabians, and the Bushes, and the Clintons. So you have to understand what's really going on here is so corrupt and so evil, and it crosses nations, and it's globalist. That's what people
looking at here's an example. Okay, going back to Ohio Governor John Kasich. Right. He presents himself as a moderate Republican, who, by the way, supports Obamacare and Common Core, but a good religious man, and he's not really, a gay rights supporter or anything. Well, it turns out that when he was a congressman, for 14 years in Washington, his roommate was a gay guy.
Well, actually, I heard him make statements that he actually supported, you would call it gay and lesbian rights, etc.
Well, he's now changed his attitude a little bit.
No, I don't believe
his official attitude. Most of his staff is said to be gay, and most of his friends in his district are said to be gay. And he's been married twice, but, these guys put a front on. Now, here's my point. As I have said, and we have talked about many times, you cannot understand the geostrategic environment in the world, the battle between the nations and what's really going on, unless you understand at the highest level there is a spiritual battle that continues from time immemorial between God and Lucifer. And what you're seeing playing out is part of that battle. Much the same on the American domestic political scene. it's not. There are two reasons why they are putting all these sexual perverts and have put all these sexual perverts in positions of power. Remember, Rahm Emanuel, former top Mossad agent in the United States, the current chief of staff to Obama for years, and now mayor of Chicago and Obama. They made their money when they were young, shall we say, sexually servicing men in the largest gay bathhouse in Chicago. George Bush Jr. was gay. Bill Clinton was anything but gay, but like Cruz, simply could not help himself, and in fact, in Clinton's case, actually raped a number of women. And by the way, they have testimony, signed, sworn testimony of at least 5 women, and that Hillary Clinton attempted to intimidate them, which makes Hillary an accessory after the fact to rape. But okay, now in the case of the governor of Ohio and others like this, it's not just that they want somebody that they can blackmail. That, of course, goes. I mean, that's a long old story, but it's more than that. They want people who are morally evil.
Right. Well,
why? Because the people behind the throne, the global banking cartel, if you want to call it Khazarian mafia, all those terms don't totally encompass everything. Illuminati, whatever you want to call it. These people are Satanists, and they want people of evil. They want people of that ilk.
Tim, I'm going to draw it a little bit more clearly. We have various branches of government. We call the public government of Congress, the Senate, and the President. But the real arm, the fourth arm of government, isn't just the public, which should be operational, but usually isn't. The fifth arm, which is a really bad one, is the secret agencies, and it crosses national borders. For example, most people aren't aware of this, but I'm going to say it's classified, that the National Security Agency of the United States actually put in and controls 3Com, which is a primary phone system in China. So every phone conversation on Earth is monitored by the NSA. Their primary node for their receipt and analysis of data through what's called the Virtual World Project, with nodes in Jakarta, Indonesia, Whitehall, England. The primary node is in what's called Falcon, Colorado, at their underground base, where they have the giant array called the Virtual World Project, array of Cray 4 and Cray 5 gallium arsenide supercomputers. Or quantum
and they also
computers.
give a massive raw feed dump direct to Israel.
Right. No, it's a real hell, I call it. Don't call it Israel. It's a real hell. Okay, now, let's face it. Israel it needs to repent, and it will. Because remember, it's not our job. It's our job to be there for our sister nation, not to throw it to the wolves, but to get it to repent of its evil. And it's not all the people in Israel. Most of the Christians in Israel are Arab Christians and former Russian Khazarian Jews that convert to become Messianics, and they lose all their benefits when they do that. So we have to understand what's really going on is globalists like Netanyahu and Lieberman are running this. Let's look at these like a series of equations. The first equation I want to lay out is Comey is pushing to actually do a personal interview of Hillary Clinton in the next few days to a week. There's dozens of agents that are pursuing her. Anybody else would already be in an orange jumpsuit and on their way to prison for many years. If they try to pardon her, do other things, it will destroy her credibility. And I think that it's very probable, although you just needed 60% of the votes, I think a lot of the superdelegates will swing toward Bernie when they see the credibility of Hillary so harmed that she can't win a federal election. So it's my guess. Here's
the thing.
Let me finish here first. Let me finish first. Let me finish first. Tim, let me finish first. Okay. Yeah. What I think in this first equation is, I think that it's very probable that we're not going to be dealing with a Hillary Democratic run. We're dealing with Bernie, the communist run. And on the other side, if you stack the current situation between Trump and the number of votes that are going with any candidate, including Trump or Cruz, they cannot beat Bernie unless Trump does what I call a Trump game against Bernie Sanders, the communist. Bernie is nuts. Bernie thinks that he's going to solve the problem by giving everybody free stuff, And you can see it with student suffering. I could make a system that combines the best of capitalism and the best of, what do you call it? I don't want to call it socialism, but the best of rationalism, where you have education that's affordable, where you have health care for everyone, where you don't have co-pays, you have a value-added tax.
You mean something that's logical, Christian,
and you don't raise minimum wage, because that'll kill small business. What you do is have a reverse tax below a certain income. So if people earn less than a certain income, you give them money so they actually have money to buy food and gasoline and go to work.
Provided they're actually working and there are jobs.
Yeah, but the thing is, you also set it up so that social services will allow a woman to have a man in the house. The social services are specifically set up, whether they're married or not to have a man. So many of these black women, one guy may have 14 kids and be receiving honor payments from the mothers, from their Social Security checks, while he's in prison serving sentences sometimes for stupid things like 3 times possessions of drugs.
I have black friends, and I've heard these stories time and time again.
And by the way, they often three strikes throat was under the Clinton era, where a young black man may have 3 times where he uses marijuana, which is ridiculous, and they throw him into prison. And what they do in Germany is they rehab. Here's my solution to the drug issue, and I want to hear your response on this. What they need to do is they need to test everybody in high school and everybody in employment. I'm a toxicologist. When we had people coming in from companies, I'd have people come in, and they come in, and I said, we're going to have a tox talk now. I said, I have Ameritox results back, and they look at me like think they're going to lie to me. I said, think of me as the molecular god. I said, I have what's called toxicological omniscience. And I said, do you know what omniscience is? And they look at me like, no, I never heard that word before. I said, omniscience means I'm all-knowing. So I said, I have your results back. If there's 1 molecule of benzoyl in your body from cocaine, I'm going to know it. And I said, the fact that you have it means you're impaired. And I don't care whether you're on drugs or this. If you have these drugs, which we test for everything out there, from PCP to whatever, you are no longer functional and able to work. And we're going to put you in rehab. We're not going to punish you and put you in prison. We're going to put you in rehab, and we're going to monitor you. Now, I think we could make a toxicological bracelet so that people would have a GPS bracelet. So after somebody is in rehab, we release them. We don't punish them. We don't put them into prison so they learn to be a criminal. But if they sweat 1 molecule of any of these illegal drugs, it goes beep, 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 and tells them GPS coordinates, and the guys in the little truck go by and grab them and put them into rehab. Once they finish rehab, not a prison.
Look, you're trying to solve a problem. The problem is there because the people at the top are making untold billions and billions and billions of dollars off of that.
Why did they do that, though?
They created the problem. They want the problem there.
Okay, no, they want it for 3 reasons. The first reason is they want $2 trillion for projects that are not being monitored since the Second World War. It was Roswell College, et cetera, in the late 40s. They don't want it monitored, what they're doing in Tier 1 science and off-world space projects, underground cities, and much more. Genetic engineering. They want $2 trillion for lots of things that are overseen by Congress and Senate, and a need-to-know basis even for the president. Number 2, they want to destroy the inner cities, which are not only black, white, yellow, brown, but they want to have a gruel class they can use to actually control through, for example, the Democratic Party has a large, what they call expanding gruel class that are basically destitute, and if they don't vote for a government that'll give them more handouts, they starve to death and have nothing. So that's what's going on. It's like de Tocqueville mentioned several hundred years ago. Democracy has a terminal period of a few hundred years when the people finally realize they can vote in their people that will supply them whatever they want. Eventually the culture and the society collapses, which is why everything decays from the idea of a free republic, which is based on a democratic ability to make income and be able to have plenty, to a social republic that eventually collapses on itself like the Soviet Union.
Well, yeah, but you have the parasitic class, the super elite at the top. These are the people that have deliberately
that's easy to solve that. You know how I would solve it? Every transaction worldwide through any corporation is tracked through an electronic tracking system that's taxed no matter where it is. So it wouldn't matter if Apple Corporation is trying to hide their money in Ecuador or whatever. You simply change the banking and the SWIFT rules to track that money. So wherever it is, the banking rules would track it.
Oh, by the way, the Pentagon Papers have taken their first major toll. The Prime Minister of Iceland now has resigned.
Well, why is that now?
Well, in these Pentagon Papers, which 2.6 terabytes of data, and of course some is being trickled out, and there are many people in the alternative media, and I think I share that belief that this is at least partially a CIA Soros psyop, but because they targeted Putin and Assad and a bunch of other people. But in the case of the Prime Minister of Iceland, he had some offshore holdings that amounted evidently to a lot of money in his wife's name, and there were all kind of shenanigans going on.
Listen, everybody's got shenanigans.
Look, I used to be Scottish editor at Burke's Peerage. I know a lot of people in the UK, and when you go to the UK, they actually run ads for these offshore things.
Right.
When I sold, along with Burke's Peerage, the first, we sold a very, very large castle dating back to about 1200 something with a feudal barony title, and it was 1.65 million, and this was 35 years ago. It sold again a couple years ago for 10 times that. But anyway, I got 50,000. My Burke's Peerage got 50,000 commission, and our commission was wired from Switzerland. Now I pay taxes on mine. Okay,
right?
But I could have put it in a Cayman Island account, and nobody would have known anything about it. This is the standard way the upper class in the UK operates.
But remember now,
all the rich people cheat on taxes in the UK. It's the middle class and the poor that pay the taxes.
Well, Tim, here's the situation. Even Obama, believe it or not, called for a revolution in international tax law. Now, it's once in a while Obama will say something that I agree with, but the way they need to do it is transnational corporations. It's not just a matter of putting tariffs on goods coming in, like, for example, Ford's going to build a plant in Mexico. It's not just putting taraffs. It's international banking.
I mean, if you buy a Lincoln, chances are it was made in Mexico.
Yeah, let me finish. What happens is that what you need is international tax law, so transnational corporations can't move money all over across borders and evade paying taxes, which would also prevent the movement of factories. It would also allow us to build up our business, and if we have plenty, we can also help build other economies up, but we wouldn't have a massive migration of our jobs and factories, so it destroys our middle class. So we have 95 million plus unemployed Americans, 65 million basically below the poverty line, and 50-some million that are basically on food stamps. It's ridiculous.
I thought we were in a recovery from a recession.
No. What happens is that's hope and change under the idiot Obama, and of course Janet Yellen is trying to make sure we don't have a collapse during Obama, so he has a heritage that he did a wonderful job. No, he is a communist. He's a globalist, and he doesn't care if he tears America apart. And remember now, Heidi Cruz wrote the North American Free Trade Agreement documents, which destroyed the country. Bill Clinton got rid of Glass-Steagall, which allowed a pipeline of our intelligence information.
The last billionaire that ran for president was the little guy from Texas, Ross Perot. I stood in the rain on Election Day, by the way, handing out literature for him. Got soaked. Ross Perot used to say, when NAFTA passes, the giant sucking sound you hear will be American jobs leaving America. And he was right.
He's a businessman. How do you think he got rich? He's competent at business. So is Trump. If Trump doesn't get in, America will collapse. And the social destruction, the race war, the violence will be unbelievable.
Hey, it's by design.
By design. No need for it at all. Make a call to anybody in Wisconsin. You vote for Trump, or you're going to face some not only job disaster, you're going to save a breakup of the America. I think 1 or 2 terms of Democratic government, which is guaranteed, or what I call a nascent dictator like Ted Cruz, will really destroy America. You need to know that up there. If you want to see, remember, the people are nice up in Wisconsin, but they're naive. They think somehow, they believe the foolishness that Trump is a woman hater, he's racist, he's all these things. They're total lies, and usually it's some screaming person who really doesn't have any evidence. In fact, if you ask him straight up a question, give us a quote as to why he is a woman hater. Now, he's made offhand statements, or obviously somebody like a teenager that doesn't have an ability to not say what he's thinking. For example, when he sees the picture of Melania Cruz, who's obviously a supermodel, he retweets something stupid, which he repented on the show last night, saying, I really shouldn't have retweeted that picture of Heidi. What he should have done is actually create his own statement of, we're not going to talk about that, but how about we talk about the fact that your wife is a major author of the North American Free Trade Agreement and is a Goldman Sachs girl.
Which is cost a major tens of millions of jobs.
Right, and the CFR. Why don't we deal with that? Let's stop talking about that. And I think if Trump refocuses and becomes presidential and stops being diverted, because he's being manipulated by Cruz, who's a master manipulator, very intelligent, incredibly lying piece of garbage. And what we have to understand...
part of the problem, and it's not really, it's a good thing, but it shows up sometimes as a problem, is Trump is not a politician.
No, let me explain what he is. I'm going to give you a medical diagnosis.
To lie, to constantly hide behind lies and...
Tim, I got to give you a diagnosis here, okay? Because when people want to complain about me, they'll say I talk too fast, I think I'm arrogant, the usual garbage, right? First off, I'm driven. Number two, I don't know how to tell a lie. In fact, if I try to tell a lie, I get caught right away, especially by my wife, okay? The fact is that and there's a difference between competency and arrogance. If you're very competent in a lot of areas, which I am, you're not arrogant because you're not trying to blow yourself up and think I'm so wonderful. I'm not wonderful. I'm a flawed human being, but I have talents and skill sets that are way beyond the average, okay? Those skill sets are there to be a leader and to tell people the truth. And like Trump, I'm successful in a touch because I'm driven, number one. I know more than almost anybody in my field, which is why when I go and talk at the Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, Environmental Medicine, Toxicology, or Fukushima, basically nobody on earth can touch me. And if they try to, we're going to have an intellectual discussion that's going to get ugly. Now, the reason why, and that's not to be...
deal in the circles that Trump deals in...
Let me finish, though.
If you're not
Tim, let me finish what I'm saying here.
An honorable person, the word gets around, and nobody will deal with you.
No, it's not that, okay? It isn't that, okay? Trump is a deal maker. He knows how to make deals. He's been doing it for years. The problem is, and people might call the term Asperger's. I like to call it a little different. I'm going to call it George Washington syndrome. I cannot tell a lie. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and a number of other successful presidents and business leaders all has what we might label, because we like to use labels, Asperger's, which basically means they really don't have the capacity. So when I have on Thursday David John Oates, and he did reverse speech, Trump's reverse speech is identical in its content and its intent to his forward speech. I'm like that too. I'm going to basically say, if someone says to something, let's say on this show, I remember I had John B. Wells on last fall, and I said, John, what's the distinguishing thing about your show? Because he's got a very nice delivery voice, a great interviewer, and so on. He says, I don't ambush my guests. I said, that's all I do. I ambush myself. And the reason why, and I say it, I don't ask people questions, I AXE them questions. Because the most important thing is not that I know everything, because I don't, and I don't have any problem with people disagreeing with me. Somebody can say, I don't believe the Pentagon, and I think the Pentagon is legit.
Director Senator Leslie Borden.
Right, but the point is, when we look at Trump, his raw, we call wire sticking out of him and his crazy hair. What he is he has the inability to tell a lie. He can see things very directly. He's driven, and he sees the end of America, and he knows that he's the guy that can fix it. And he knows if he's not the elected guy, and he actually had an opportunity 25 years ago. I was reading his first wife's comments, which actually she still likes him and treats him with respect, said, it was with the divorce and with him going with Marilyn Maples, he was going to run for president 25 years ago, but didn't. He had the capacity, he had the money, he had the ability. He didn't do it because he knew all the negative stuff would come after him. All this stuff about, Corey, his campaigin manager, so-called attacking and pull this woman down.
That's total farce.
Michelle Fields actually, not only that, she could get sued by Trump for trying to grab him while he's heading out, and then she would literally blip past the Secret Service.
She had two elbows being grabbed. One was being grabbed by a Secret Service agent.
Right. So the Secret Service agent is trying to grab her and say, no, question's over, they're on the way out the door, and then she accuses Corey because, you see, it's another way to say Trump is a misogynist. He hates women. This guy loves women. And then he looks for hot women. He loves women. He has women, corporate heads of departments, heads of corporations under him. He is not a woman hater. Number two, he's not a racist.
I'll tell you what, he's had three gorgeous wives, and the one
right, now listen to this. He's had black,
go ahead.
He has lots of black friends. For example, what's that black fighter? It's been his buddy for like 25, 30 years. And then we have, even the Nation of Islam is actually backing him. Well, you got to understand that Trump is not a racist. And if there's skinheads of people that like him, it's because they're so enraged by what's going on. Trump is not a skinhead. He's not a neo-Nazi. He's got two children that are married to Jews, and he supports the state of Israel. If you listen to his AIPAC statement, you say, wow, we want this guy as president, not the current fool in the White House that's putting us in grave danger.
But he's not a puppet to him.
Right, but here's what's going to. But he's also not going to.
Because they want somebody that's an
but he's not going to sacrifice them.
And you know what? That's not good for Israel.
Well, look at the deal that Obama did. On the last missile that was sent a month ago by the nation of the mullahs of Iran, it said in Hebrew and in Farsi, we shall destroy the nation of Israel. Okay? Now, let me tell you, that should mean all that money that was about to go to Iran, stop the damn thing, and close off the deal, and we're done with you, okay? And what they need to do is they need to go in there with the Delta Force and clean up all those different sites where they're building nuclear materials and ready to shoot bombs at Israel. Because Israel has what's called...
I think there's other ways to do it.
No, this is the way you do it, okay? I'm going to tell you, I'm like Trump. I'll tell you how to do it. You got to do banking things to close them off. You need to go and send the Delta Force and close off all these nuclear sites. You need to deal with it in a military fashion right away. Because if Iran decides to start attacking, say, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, who has nukes, or if they attack Israel, who has nukes, they're going to get nuked, and the nukes are going to go also up to China and Russia. It's going to get very ugly, meaning World War III. So what Obama's done is set the trigger for a nuclear war that'll cause to destroy the planet. And Trump is one of the ones that
there are multiple triggers.
Yeah, but this is one of the worst. Yeah, but this is the worst of the triggers. Okay, the trigger between
that's probably correct.
The trigger between India and Pakistan is they got a narrow window of 2 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever, for firing nukes. That's extremely unlikely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's extremely unlikely. Okay, the real trigger is when a missile says on the side in Farsi and Hebrew they're going to destroy Israel, and Israel has nuclear weapons, space-based weapon platforms, ImageSat. Remember now, I have classified contacts inside Israel to know exactly what they have. And let me tell you, if you knew what Israel had, any nation on earth, including us, better shake in their boots. Because you try to take out Israel, like Samson in the temple of Dagon, he's going to tear down the roof and he's going to destroy any nation that dares to attack him.
Right, but they're still vulnerable. And I've said...
Oh, yeah, they're vulnerable. But remember...
top generals...
Did Samson survive?
This was before the Gulf War, the first Gulf War. And I told him what Saddam Hussein could do with his Al-Hussein was what we called Scud missile force.
Right.
That scared the hell out of him.
Right. But
I hope and pray that
remember the super gun by Gerald Bull, right? By the super gun by Gerald Bull was
when we baited Saddam into attacking Kuwait. Because,
well, exactly.
I made my point. This was over lunch, three of us, my buddy who was the head of a Aerospace Design Bureau and me and the general, and I made my point quite well. And he says, we can take out his missiles. And I said, no, look at the restaurant you're in. I said, give me a little bit of time and I can do some stuff with lead so the most advanced radar penetrating satellites couldn't see the missiles here. He kind of looked at me and I said, I know that.
Yeah, Tim,
you could knock the walls out or let him slide, pre-survey the launch points. I said, I guarantee you he can hide his missiles. And it turned out, of course, we only found one or two that we took out on the ground.
Well, you have skill sets that I don't know anybody else has in terms of military strategy, which is why you know how crazy this is right now, and why if Trump doesn't get in there
we are in, this world is an absolute madhouse on so many levels.
Oh, yeah.
All I can say, folks, is we're out of time, is get right with God.
And also, if you're looking at this with like the missile crisis in Cuba, the communist police state, this is far worse than the missile crisis in the 1960s.
That was a Sunday school picnic compared to the stuff that's going on today.
Obama's is got a flamethrower on the bomb. How's that?
He's an idiot.
It's crazy. He's an idiot. He's a satanic idiot.